The joke was supposed to last 3 seconds. Instead, it changed the balance of power in New York. Inside the crystal ballroom of the St. Regis, the city's most dangerous smiles glittered beneath gold chandeliers. Politicians shook hands with billionaires, executives exchanged silent threats over champagne, and every camera waited for one mistake powerful enough to become tomorrow's headline. Then Olivia Hart walked in alone. She did not need a man beside her to look important. At 31, Olivia had built HeartMind, a billion-dollar AI company that governments begged to use and enemies quietly feared. She wore a silver dress that moved like moonlight, her dark hair pinned neatly, her face calm enough to fool the entire room. But behind that calm lived loneliness, old betrayal, and emotional scars she never allowed anyone to see. Reporters called her brilliant. Investors called her untouchable. Her staff called her a machine. None of them knew how often she returned to her penthouse, removed her diamonds, and stood in the silence wondering why success still felt so cold. Across the ballroom, Sebastian Knight arrived like a shadow wearing a crown. To the public, he was a private investor with hotels, ports, security firms, and luxury real estate across 3 continents. To the people who whispered in back rooms, he was the king of an invisible empire, a man whose control reached places the law never dared to enter. Conversations lowered when he passed. Men with too much confidence suddenly remembered fear. Women stared, then looked away before his eyes could catch them. Reporters rushed him near the charity auction wall, cameras flashing close to his face. "Mr. Knight, is it true your family arranged your engagement to Senator Vale's daughter?" Sebastian's jaw tightened for half a second. He hated traps, especially public ones. His enemies wanted him tied to politics. His family wanted the alliance. His rivals wanted proof he could be controlled. Then his eyes moved across the room and found Olivia. She was standing near the marble staircase, untouched by the crowd, holding a glass she had not sipped. For one strange moment, the noise thinned. Sebastian saw the careful mask on her face because he wore one too. He saw the loneliness hidden under power. He saw danger circling a woman who had no idea how many predators had already noticed her. So he smiled faintly and pointed toward her. "My wife is right there," he said casually. The ballroom laughed. Cameras turned. Heads followed. Olivia froze as hundreds of eyes landed on her. Her heart pounding, she looked at Sebastian, expecting arrogance, mockery, a cruel rich man's game. Instead, she found him watching her with a stillness that made her breath catch. A reporter laughed louder. "Mrs. Knight." Olivia should have denied it. She should have smiled politely, protected her reputation, and stepped away from the storm. But something in Sebastian's gaze held her there. Something dangerous. Something safe. Her cheeks warmed. Then, softly enough that only the nearest cameras caught it, Olivia said, "I wish it were true." The laughter died. Sebastian went completely still. The entire ballroom seemed to lose air. Champagne flutes paused halfway to painted lips. Politicians stopped pretending not to listen. Billionaires leaned in as if a market had crashed in human form. Olivia realized what she had said, but she did not take it back. For once, her mask slipped, and the truth stood exposed between them. She was tired of being admired from a distance. Tired of being useful, powerful, alone. Tired of men wanting her company, her code, her mind, but never her wounded heart. Sebastian crossed the room slowly. Every step made the silence heavier. He stopped close enough for her to smell cedar, smoke, and expensive cologne. His voice dropped into a private whisper. "Careful, Olivia. In my world, words like that become mine." Her pulse kicked hard. She should have felt fear. Instead, she felt seen. "Then maybe you should be careful too," she murmured. "I don't belong to men who only want control." A flash of surprise moved through his eyes, then something darker, warmer. Respect. Around them, phones lifted. Social media exploded before the orchestra finished its next note. By midnight, every screen in New York screamed the same rumor. Sebastian Knight had a secret wife, and she was Olivia Hart. But not everyone found it romantic. Near the exit, Adrian Vale watched with a frozen smile. His daughter had been promised to Sebastian. That alliance was supposed to secure political immunity, corporate access, and quiet ownership over parts of Sebastian's empire. Olivia Hart had just ruined it with one blush and one confession. On the balcony above, a man with a snake-shaped cufflink sent a single text. "The girl matters." Sebastian saw the movement. He saw the rival eyes, the shifted shoulders, the sudden interest in Olivia's name. His expression hardened. Olivia noticed. "What is it?" "Nothing," he said. But his body had already moved closer, blocking her from the room as if his shadow alone could protect her. For the rest of the gala, Sebastian stayed near her. Not touching. Not claiming. Yet every dangerous man in the ballroom understood the message. She is under my protection. And Olivia, who had spent years being strong because no one had ever stayed, felt something terrifying unfold inside her chest. Safe. That word scared her more than danger. Later that night, alone in her penthouse above Manhattan, Olivia stood barefoot before the window while the city glittered beneath her. Her phone would not stop vibrating. Articles, messages, memes, warnings. She ignored them all and remembered Sebastian's voice. Words like that become mine. She touched her lips, angry at herself for smiling. Then the lights flickered. Olivia turned. From the hallway outside her penthouse door came a soft electronic beep. Then another. Someone was trying to break in. Olivia's pulse thundered in her ears as another electronic beep echoed through the penthouse hallway. Heart pounding, she stood frozen beneath the soft glow of Manhattan's skyline, her breath caught somewhere between disbelief and fear. The gala had ended only hours ago. One careless confession, one impossible joke, and suddenly danger stood outside her door. The realization settled cold and sharp in her chest. This wasn't paranoia. Someone truly intended to reach her. Before Olivia could move toward the security panel, her phone illuminated the dark room. One message appeared on the screen. Step away from the door. Her breath hitched. A second later, the penthouse elevator opened with mechanical precision. Sebastian Knight emerged with two members of his security team behind him, his expression carved from controlled fury. He looked less like a businessman and more like the king the city whispered about behind closed doors. You tracked my phone? Olivia demanded, anger battling panic. You were targeted because of me, Sebastian replied evenly. You don't have the luxury of being offended. The attempted intrusion had already failed. The intruders vanished before they breached the final security layer, but Sebastian's men moved efficiently through the penthouse, sweeping every room with quiet discipline. Olivia crossed her arms. I built an AI company that protects international systems. I don't need bodyguards following me. Sebastian's dark eyes settled on her. This isn't cyber warfare, Olivia. Rival syndicates believe you're important to me now. And are they wrong? The question lingered between them. For the first time in years, Sebastian hesitated. Outside, he ruled an empire built on power and absolute control. Men offered loyalty because they feared losing everything. But Olivia Hart stood before him untouched by his reputation. She challenged him without trembling, refusing to become another person intimidated into silence. I don't know, Sebastian admitted quietly. Olivia stared at him. The honesty startled her more than the danger itself. I refuse to spend my life hiding behind armed escorts, she said firmly. I won't surrender my freedom because criminals made assumptions. You misunderstand, Sebastian said, stepping close enough for his voice to become a low whisper. This isn't punishment. It's protection. I don't belong to anyone. A flicker crossed his face. I know, he replied. But until I eliminate this threat, your safety is mine to worry about. The possessiveness should have angered her. Instead, it unsettled her for an entirely different reason. Because beneath Sebastian's dangerous exterior existed something unexpected. Responsibility. The burden of protecting everyone under his care. He carried loyalty like armor and accepted fear as the cost of leadership. Olivia saw exhaustion hidden beneath his calm control. Sebastian noticed the loneliness she disguised beneath brilliance. Neither acknowledged the attraction quietly unfolding beneath their arguments. The following days became a battlefield of personalities. Olivia attempted to dismiss security details. Sebastian reinstated them. She bypassed schedules. He adapted protocols around her routines. She challenged every decision he made, refusing to surrender autonomy. Yet gradually, tension evolved into respect. Sebastian listened when Olivia explained how she had built Heart-Mind from nothing while grieving losses nobody recognized. Olivia listened when Sebastian described leadership as choosing impossible outcomes while ensuring those under your protection survived the consequences. He never glorified the empire he controlled. She never apologized for the ambition others criticized. Somewhere between disagreements and reluctant conversations, fear lost its sharpest edges. Safe no longer felt like weakness. It became trust. Late one evening, Sebastian arrived at Olivia's penthouse carrying updated security files. She accepted them with narrowed eyes before noticing something unusual among the documents. A photograph. Her expression shifted instantly. The image captured Olivia leaving her office 6 months earlier. Another showed her entering a bookstore. Another documented her morning coffee routine. Her breath caught painfully. The dates continued. Weeks. Months. Someone had been watching long before the gala. Sebastian's jaw hardened as Olivia slowly lifted her gaze toward him. For the first time since they met, genuine fear entered Sebastian Knight's eyes. Because whoever had been following Olivia hadn't mistaken her for someone important to the king. They had chosen her long before Sebastian ever called her his wife. Olivia Hart had spent years preparing for market crashes, hostile acquisitions, and ruthless competitors who disguised greed behind polished smiles. She knew how to survive boardroom betrayals because technology was its own battlefield. Data was currency. Information was power. Control belonged to those who stayed 3 moves ahead. But no Harvard case study had prepared her for discovering that criminal wars could infiltrate stock exchanges just as easily as they infiltrated dark alleys. 3 days after Sebastian revealed the photographs documenting months of surveillance, HeartMind's carefully built foundation began to fracture. Investors started canceling meetings. Anonymous messages flooded executive inboxes. Board members received warnings disguised as professional advice. Distance yourselves from Olivia Hart. Withdraw before the collapse. The timing was impossible to ignore. Someone was turning Olivia's billion-dollar company into collateral damage. Inside HeartMind headquarters, employees whispered behind glass conference rooms while financial analysts monitored stock fluctuations with growing alarm. Olivia stood at the head of the executive table, dressed in navy silk and absolute composure, refusing to let fear infect the people who depended on her leadership. Our competitors want panic, she said steadily, scanning the anxious faces surrounding her. Panic creates mistakes. We will not give them either. But what if these threats continue? One executive asked nervously. Olivia met his gaze without hesitation. Then we adapt. Heart pounding beneath her calm exterior, Olivia took control the way she always had. She reorganized cybersecurity divisions, initiated internal audits, strengthened investor communications, and personally addressed concerns spreading through financial circles. She worked 18-hour days without complaint, refusing to surrender the company she had built from determination and sacrifice. Sebastian watched everything unfold from the shadows. He had expected fear. Instead, he witnessed resilience. Standing in Olivia's office overlooking Manhattan, he observed her directing executives twice her age with effortless authority. She never raised her voice. She didn't seek sympathy. She solved problems while others searched for blame. You should let my people handle this, Sebastian said quietly one evening. Olivia glanced up from multiple financial reports. My employees trust me, she replied. Leadership means standing beside them when everything becomes uncertain. Leadership also means accepting protection. A small smile touched her lips. You really struggle with the word no, don't you? And you struggle with accepting help. For a moment, silence settled comfortably between them. Close enough to notice exhaustion beneath each other's masks, they recognized something familiar. Responsibility. Sebastian carried an empire on his shoulders. Olivia carried thousands of careers inside her decisions. Different worlds. The same burden. Outside corporate headquarters, rival groups escalated their tactics. False allegations emerged online. Strategic partners withdrew unexpectedly. Coordinated financial attacks attempted to destabilize HeartMind's market confidence. Yet Olivia refused to break. She analyzed patterns others overlooked. She identified manipulated narratives before they spread further. She transformed potential disasters into public demonstrations of transparency and strength. Sebastian found himself admiring more than her intelligence. He admired her refusal to become a victim. She was not a victim. Even surrounded by danger, Olivia remained the architect of her own future. You know what frightens your enemies? Sebastian asked during a rare quiet dinner inside her penthouse. Olivia looked toward him curiously. My reputation? No. His voice softened. You. Her breath caught. They expected someone who needed saving, Sebastian continued. Instead, they found someone powerful enough to fight beside me. The confession settled deeply between them. Olivia had spent years believing admiration depended upon achievement. Sebastian saw the woman beneath accomplishment. Strong, stubborn, compassionate, human. For the first time since this nightmare began, Olivia allowed herself to trust him. Not the king feared throughout the criminal world. Sebastian. The man who arrived before danger breached her door. The man who listened. The man who stayed. The attraction neither acknowledged openly deepened into something infinitely more dangerous. Dependence. Loyalty. Oh. 2 nights later, Olivia attended a public innovation summit where she was scheduled to deliver the keynote address regarding ethical artificial intelligence. The venue overflowed with investors, journalists, entrepreneurs, and international delegates eager to hear HeartMind's response to recent controversies. Backstage, Sebastian adjusted the discreet security protocols surrounding the event. "After your speech, we're leaving immediately," he instructed. Olivia sighed. "You know I hate being ordered around." "I know." She hesitated before offering him a small nod. "Fine." As Olivia stepped beneath brilliant stage lights, applause thundered through the auditorium. She smiled professionally and approached the podium. Then Sebastian's expression changed. Across the crowded venue, one member of the audience lifted a phone toward the stage. His security team froze. Heart pounding violently, Sebastian recognized the symbol displayed on the illuminated screen. The same symbol hidden behind the photographs of Olivia. And suddenly he realized this public appearance had never been about listening to a CEO speak. Someone had designed tonight as the perfect place for Olivia Hart to die. The Innovation Summit ended in chaos without ever descending into the violence everyone feared. Sebastian's security team moved with disciplined precision, quietly evacuating Olivia before panic could consume the crowded venue. The symbol displayed on the stranger's phone had confirmed one terrifying truth. The danger surrounding Olivia was organized, patient, and growing closer with every passing day. By sunrise, Sebastian made a decision that wasn't open for negotiation. "You are moving into my estate," he said. Olivia stared at him across the back seat of the armored vehicle. "You really have an impressive talent for making demands sound reasonable. This isn't about control. It usually is with you." Sebastian's dark gaze settled on her. "No," he replied quietly. "This is about protecting you." For once, Olivia didn't argue. Fear still lingered beneath her carefully maintained composure. Someone had followed her for months. Her company had been targeted. Public appearances had transformed into calculated risks. The illusion that she could simply return to normal life had finally shattered. The Knight estate stood on the outskirts of Manhattan like a kingdom built from silence and old secrets. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked endless private gardens, while state-of-the-art security blended seamlessly with timeless architecture. It wasn't cold as Olivia expected. It felt lived in. Unexpectedly human. Sebastian led her through the grand hall without ceremony. "You'll have the East Wing," he said. "You mean the wing where prisoners are kept?" The corner of his mouth shifted slightly. "Guests." Olivia studied him. "Do all your guests receive armed protection and biometric access?" "No." "What makes me different?" His answer came without hesitation. "Because you're mine to protect." The possessive statement sent warmth and confusion spiraling through her chest. She should have challenged him. Instead, her breath caught as she realized something far more dangerous. For the first time in weeks, she felt safe. Life inside Sebastian's estate slowly reshaped itself around routines neither of them anticipated. Shared breakfasts became discussions about technology, economics, and philosophy. Late dinners stretched into midnight conversations beneath soft lighting and quiet music drifting through empty corridors. Olivia discovered Sebastian preferred black coffee and old jazz records. He remembered the birthdays of every employee working inside the estate. The feared king of an empire personally ensured staff members received support during family emergencies. Power had never erased his humanity. One evening, seated across from each other in the library, Olivia finally asked the question she'd avoided. "What happened to you?" Sebastian remained silent long enough that she almost apologized. "I learned early that love creates vulnerabilities," he said at last. "My father ruled through fear and absolute control. Loyalty was demanded, never earned. Anyone he cared about became leverage against him." His voice softened. "I watched people I loved disappear because they stood too close to the king." Olivia saw something she'd never witnessed before. Grief. "You built walls?" she whispered. "I built an empire. And forgot how to live inside it." Their eyes met. Neither looked away. Days later, Sebastian found Olivia standing alone on the estate balcony overlooking the city skyline. "You can't sleep," he observed. Olivia wrapped her arms around herself. "My greatest fear isn't dying," she admitted softly. "It's losing everything I've worked for and discovering none of it mattered. That people only valued what I built, never who I was." The confession hung fragile between them. Sebastian stepped beside her. Close enough that she could feel his steady presence without touch. "You matter," he said simply. Olivia blinked rapidly. "You don't know that." "I do." His voice lowered into a whisper carried by the evening breeze. Because even stripped of your company, your titles, and your success, you'd still fight for everyone under your care. You would still choose courage. Heart pounding, Olivia looked toward the man New York feared. The king who protected without asking for gratitude. The man who listened. The man who stayed. Emotional healing didn't arrive dramatically. It unfolded quietly through shared silences, midnight honesty, and trust built one conversation at a time. Safe no longer meant weakness. It meant choosing someone who guarded your fears instead of exploiting them. For the first time in years, Olivia slept peacefully. But peace inside the night estate proved dangerously temporary. The following morning, Sebastian's head of security entered his private office carrying a sealed file and an expression stripped of all composure. "There has been a breach," he said. Sebastian opened the folder. Inside were internal communications regarding Olivia's protection schedule. Information accessible only to his most trusted people. His expression darkened instantly. Because the enemy wasn't merely watching from outside anymore. Evidence pointed toward something infinitely more devastating. There was a traitor hidden inside Sebastian Knight's empire. Before continuing the story, here's the next section drafted according to your specifications. The first lesson Sebastian Knight had learned as king of his empire was simple. Enemies announced themselves through threats. Traitors smiled across dinner tables. The sealed file remained untouched in Sebastian's hands for several seconds as silence settled heavily inside his private office. Outside the estate windows, morning sunlight painted the gardens gold, creating an illusion of peace that no longer existed. "There has to be a mistake," one security advisor whispered. Sebastian slowly raised his eyes. "I don't make decisions based on hope." The room fell silent. Internal protection schedules. Estate access updates. Olivia's movements. Information known only to Sebastian's inner circle had somehow reached the people hunting her. Fear spread through the empire faster than rumors ever had. For years, Sebastian had built loyalty carefully. Trust had become the foundation beneath his power and control. He rewarded devotion and protected those who stood beside him. He knew the names of their children, attended funerals, remembered promises. Yet betrayal had entered through the front door. The investigation unfolded quietly. Sebastian reviewed encrypted communications personally. Financial transfers surfaced beneath layers of false identities. Hidden meetings emerged through months of surveillance records. Then the truth arrived. The traitor was Victor Moreau, his underboss, his closest advisor. The man who had stood beside Sebastian through corporate expansions, political negotiations, and criminal conflicts spanning almost 15 years. The revelation shattered something fundamental. Victor had helped build the empire. He had celebrated victories. He had offered guidance during impossible decisions. And all along he had been selling pieces of Sebastian's kingdom to rival factions. Years of betrayal exposed themselves like fractures spreading beneath glass. "He was family," one advisor murmured. Sebastian's expression remained unreadable. "No," he replied quietly. "Family doesn't calculate your destruction." Meanwhile, Olivia sat inside the estate library reviewing documents connected to Heart-Mind's recovery efforts. Even after weeks of escalating danger, she continued working because surrender had never existed within her vocabulary. She was not a victim. She became powerful long before Sebastian entered her life. But as evidence accumulated around her, an uncomfortable realization surfaced. Every threat pointed toward one undeniable conclusion. She had become the primary target. Not Sebastian. Not Heart-Mind. When Sebastian entered the library later that evening, exhaustion carved shadows beneath his eyes. "What happened?" Olivia asked immediately. His silence answered first. Then carefully he revealed everything. Victor. The hidden alliance. The years of deception. Olivia listened without interruption. "Do you know what hurts most?" Sebastian finally asked, his voice rough around the edges. "Not losing control. Not the damage to the empire." He met her gaze. "It's realizing I welcomed danger into the lives of people I was supposed to protect." Olivia moved close enough for her shoulder to brush his. "You couldn't predict someone else's choices. I should have seen it." "No." Her whisper carried absolute certainty. "Betrayal belongs to the betrayer." For the first time since discovering Victor's treachery, Sebastian's composure cracked. Fear wasn't unfamiliar. But this fear had a name. Olivia. The thought of losing her hollowed something inside him he could no longer deny. Because somewhere between arguments, midnight confessions, and shared silence, she had become irreplaceable. 2 nights later, the estate shifted into crisis mode. Security protocols changed. Movement became restricted. Every familiar face transformed into a question. Who knew? Who could still be trusted? Loyalty collapsed beneath suspicion. War no longer waited outside the gates. It lived within the empire itself. Olivia refused to hide despite escalating tension. "I won't spend my life locked away," she argued. "You don't understand the risk." "I understand enough." Heart pounding, Sebastian reached for restraint he no longer possessed. "You matter to me." The confession escaped before calculation could stop it. Silence followed. Olivia's breath caught. Then footsteps echoed through the corridor. An urgent message arrived. A member of Sebastian's staff had requested Olivia's immediate presence regarding HeartMind's emergency investor response. Against instinct and under carefully arranged security measures, Olivia agreed to attend the private meeting within a secure estate wing. The room waited exactly as described. Empty. A cold realization settled into her chest. Too late. The door closed softly behind her. No violence erupted. No dramatic confrontation unfolded. Only silence. And understanding. Someone had manipulated trust itself. By the time Sebastian discovered the deception, Olivia had vanished. Fear transformed into something far more devastating. Panic. The king who governed an empire through discipline lost the careful control he had spent years mastering. Orders spread across continents. Resources mobilized instantly. Businesses halted operations. Allies demanded answers. Enemies celebrated too early. The empire entered full crisis. Because Olivia Hart had been taken. Hours later, confined within an unfamiliar room far from Sebastian's reach, Olivia examined the documents deliberately left where she could find them. Photographs. Medical records. Academic reports. Surveillance logs. Her hands trembled. Her breath faltered. Heart pounding violently, Olivia realized the terrifying truth hidden beneath every lie. The people hunting her had not chosen her because Sebastian Knight jokingly called her his wife. They had not targeted her because she captured the king's attention. They had chosen Olivia Hart years before she ever learned Sebastian Knight existed. Before continuing the story, here's the next section drafted according to your specifications. The room meant to contain Olivia Hart resembled a luxury suite rather than a prison. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked an unfamiliar coastline, books lined polished shelves, and untouched meals appeared with mechanical precision. Whoever orchestrated her disappearance understood something crucial about power. Fear worked better when wrapped in comfort. They wanted confusion, compliance, and dependence. They expected gratitude for gentler chains. They had underestimated Olivia Hart. During the first 24 hours, she observed everything. She counted footsteps in the hallway, memorized meal schedules, and noted the subtle changes in staff routines. She recognized the expensive technology embedded behind the walls and the carefully hidden cameras disguised as decorative fixtures. Her breath remained steady even when her heart pounded beneath composed expressions. Fear existed. But fear had never controlled her. People often mistook kindness for fragility and intelligence for harmlessness. Investors had doubted her before HeartMind became a billion-dollar success. Competitors had dismissed her until she outmaneuvered them. Rivals believed she excelled only inside conference rooms. They never understood the truth. She was not a victim. She became powerful because life had repeatedly demanded it. On the third morning, Olivia intentionally appeared exhausted. She allowed uncertainty to soften her posture and spoke less during routine interactions. Her captors relaxed incrementally, mistaking adaptation for surrender. The illusion worked beautifully. A guard answered a phone call too close to her doorway. 2 handlers discussed shipment schedules without lowering their voices enough. Names surfaced. Locations emerged. Financial references connected with fragments hidden within the surveillance files she discovered earlier. Olivia gathered intelligence the same way she'd once gathered market insights. Patiently. Quietly. Strategically. Danger had entered her life long before Sebastian Knight. She simply hadn't recognized its shape. Late one evening, while reviewing documents left within her suite's digital terminal, Olivia uncovered encrypted records buried beneath ordinary financial reports. She recognized algorithmic patterns immediately. HeartMind. Someone had studied her company's proprietary systems years earlier. Someone had monitored her academic research before HeartMind even existed. Her fingers paused over the screen. This wasn't opportunistic targeting. It was obsession. Meanwhile, inside the Knight estate, Sebastian existed in a state his empire had never witnessed. He didn't sleep. He didn't rest. The king who once exercised flawless control paced through war rooms assembled inside private offices. Intelligence teams coordinated across international territories while trusted allies pursued every lead. Fear hollowed him from within. Not fear for himself. Fear of failing Olivia. Then evidence arrived. Communication intercepts. Behavioral reports. Patterns. Sebastian reviewed Olivia's activities following her disappearance and noticed something impossible. The enemy's plans had begun unraveling. Meetings shifted unexpectedly. Logistical operations stalled. Financial transfers rerouted. The organization holding Olivia appeared increasingly disorganized. Confused. Reactive. Sebastian stared at the reports. A slow realization emerged. "She's doing this," he whispered. His advisors exchanged uncertain glances. "What?" Sebastian looked toward the map displaying fragmented enemy movements. "Olivia." Disbelief transformed into reluctant admiration. Even isolated from allies, stripped of resources, and surrounded by uncertainty, she wasn't waiting to be rescued. She was dismantling their plans from within. A faint smile touched Sebastian's expression for the first time in days. The woman he'd tried so desperately to protect had never needed saving in the way he'd imagined. Protection wasn't ownership. Love wasn't helplessness. Olivia didn't diminish beneath pressure. She evolved. She became powerful. Back inside captivity, Olivia continued constructing invisible advantages. She manipulated assumptions carefully, asking seemingly innocent questions and offering observations designed to provoke discussion among her captors. Each reaction revealed something valuable. Every careless answer expanded the larger picture. Close to midnight, one particular conversation shifted everything. Two voices drifted through partially open doors. Never should have involved night. He accelerated the timeline. The original objective was always heart. Olivia froze. Heart pounding violently, she leaned closer. Years of preparation. The project. She inherited more than she realizes. Her breath caught. Inherited? The word echoed relentlessly through her mind. Returning to her suite, Olivia reopened archived files she'd managed to access through manipulated credentials. Hidden beneath layers of classified documentation sat photographs she'd never seen before. Her parents, research teams, government contracts, private investors. The dates stretched back decades. Long before Heart-Mind. Long before Sebastian. Long before the gala joke that changed everything. Fear threatened to overwhelm her. Instead, clarity arrived. Every betrayal. Every attack. Every calculated move. They weren't random. They formed a single story. A single architect. Olivia studied the final image displayed on the screen. Her expression hardened. The frightened CEO who once wondered whether success mattered disappeared entirely. In her place stood a woman shaped by intelligence, resilience, and truth. She was not a victim. She became powerful. And staring back at her from that final photograph, standing beside her late father with a familiar smile, Olivia finally identified the mastermind behind everything. The person orchestrating this war had been hiding in plain sight all along. Before continuing the story, here's the next section drafted according to your specifications. War did not always arrive with sirens and shattered glass. Sometimes, it arrived through collapsing stock prices, disappearing alliances, and whispered promises exchanged behind polished boardroom doors. By the time Olivia uncovered the mastermind hidden behind decades of deception, the fragile line separating Sebastian Knight's legitimate businesses from his criminal empire had finally disappeared. The war had begun. The revelation reached Sebastian through encrypted channels Olivia had manipulated from within captivity. The evidence connected rival syndicates, corrupted executives, and political figures whose loyalty had been purchased years ago. The enemy had never intended to destroy only Sebastian. They intended to inherit everything. Heart-Mind's technology, Knight Industries, financial networks, influence, power. They wanted the king dethroned. They had underestimated the woman standing beside him. Using information gathered during her confinement, Olivia quietly disrupted strategic acquisitions designed to cripple Sebastian's holdings. She identified compromised board members, redirected vulnerable assets, and exposed hidden vulnerabilities within shell corporations controlled by rival organizations. The executives who once questioned her presence inside Sebastian's world watched with growing disbelief as the CEO they had dismissed preserved billions through intelligence alone. Fear transformed into respect. For years, the Knight organization had viewed Olivia as someone the king chose to protect. Now they understood. She protected the empire too. Sebastian stood at the center of controlled chaos, issuing instructions with calm authority while international operations shifted beneath his command. Even amid uncertainty, loyalty remained his greatest weapon. The people who stayed did so because they believed in the man beneath the title. The king never abandoned his own. When Olivia returned to the Knight estate under reinforced security, silence greeted her before something unexpected followed. Respect. Employees nodded. Advisors listened. Veteran members of the organization no longer saw an outsider standing beside Sebastian. They saw their future queen. Olivia felt the shift immediately. She had earned it. Not through fear. Not through inheritance. Through courage. She was not a victim. She became powerful. Late one evening inside the estate's operations center, Sebastian studied the woman standing beside him as she analyzed financial reports and operational risks with quiet confidence. "You should rest," he said. "So should you. Kings don't rest during war." Olivia finally looked up at him. "Neither do queens." Something unspoken passed between them. Close enough to recognize the burdens they carried, they understood each other completely. Love had not arrived through grand declarations. It emerged through partnership, loyalty, and choosing each other repeatedly despite the dangers surrounding them. The enemy launched their final strategy through coordinated economic sabotage and internal destabilization. Rivals who had hidden in shadows stepped forward openly, believing Sebastian weakened by betrayal and emotional attachment. One by one they fell. The executives manipulating heart-mind were exposed. Political allies funding rival interests withdrew support. Business leaders who profited from deception faced public collapse. The empire adapted, expanded, survived, because the king no longer fought alone. During the final phase of the conflict, Olivia remained beside Sebastian despite every warning urging distance. "You don't belong here," one advisor whispered. Olivia met his gaze steadily. "I've been here since the moment they chose me." Sebastian heard her answer. His expression softened. For the first time in years, the king allowed himself to believe in a future beyond survival. A future where power wasn't isolation. Where loyalty wasn't fear. Where love didn't guarantee loss. As dawn approached over Manhattan, Sebastian and Olivia reviewed the final intelligence package exposing the mastermind's remaining assets. Victory hovered painfully close. Then everything changed. A warning echoed through Sebastian's communications device. A compromised route. A delayed security update. A hidden contingency plan overlooked in the aftermath of victory. Heart pounding, Olivia barely processed the realization before Sebastian moved instinctively. His arm wrapped around her. Protect. The single thought drove every decision he made. Olivia's breath caught as Sebastian pulled her close, shielding her from danger neither of them anticipated. The room fell silent. The queen watched in horror as the king staggered. For one devastating moment, the man who had carried an empire and protected everyone he loved finally looked vulnerable. And Olivia realized the war might demand its cruelest price yet. Sebastian Knight had been seriously wounded protecting her. The first thing Olivia heard was the steady rhythm of Sebastian's breathing. After days defined by fear, war, and uncertainty, that simple sound shattered something inside her. Standing beside his hospital bed within the private medical wing of the Knight estate, Olivia finally allowed herself to close her eyes. Her breath trembled as relief replaced the terror she had buried beneath responsibility. Sebastian Knight had survived. The king opened his eyes slowly, finding Olivia seated close beside him, exhaustion softening the sharp confidence she carried into every boardroom. "You stayed," he whispered. Olivia laughed quietly despite the tears gathering in her eyes. "You really thought I'd leave?" The corner of his mouth lifted. "I wasn't sure." She reached for his hand without hesitation. "You protected me when you didn't have to. You trusted me when others doubted me. Loyalty isn't convenient, Sebastian. It's a choice." Silence settled around them. Safe. For the first time since a careless joke at a charity gala altered the course of their lives, safe no longer felt temporary. Outside the estate, the enemy network collapsed piece by piece. The mastermind's carefully constructed alliances dissolved under public exposure and financial investigations. The rival organizations that had thrived through manipulation found themselves abandoned by the same people who once celebrated their influence. The war ended not because fear ruled louder than hope, but because truth proved stronger than deception. Peace returned. HeartMind entered its most successful era. Under Olivia's leadership, the company expanded internationally, developing ethical innovations that transformed healthcare systems, security infrastructures and educational access. Investors once frightened by controversy praised the resilience of a CEO who had refused to surrender. She was not a victim. She became powerful. And the world noticed. Inside the Night Empire, something equally extraordinary unfolded. The people who had once questioned Olivia's place within Sebastian's world no longer whispered doubts. Advisors sought her perspective. Employees greeted her warmly. Veterans who had served Sebastian for decades recognized the balance she brought to the king they respected. Power no longer isolated him. She softened his shadows without diminishing his strength. One evening, weeks after Sebastian's recovery, the estate hosted a celebration unlike any gathering it had witnessed before. There were no negotiations hidden behind champagne glasses. No alliances built from fear. Only gratitude, family, loyalty. Standing beneath thousands of lights illuminating the estate gardens, Olivia watched Sebastian move through the crowd. He paused to thank employees personally, listened patiently to stories from longtime staff members, and smiled more freely than she had ever seen. Eventually, he found her beneath the old oak tree overlooking the city skyline. "You've been avoiding speeches all evening," Olivia observed. "I prefer actions." She tilted her head slightly. "And what action are you planning now, King?" Sebastian stepped close. Close enough that the noise around them disappeared entirely. "I spent my life believing protect meant carrying everything alone," he said quietly. "I thought love created weakness." Olivia's heart pounded. "And now?" His eyes never left hers. "Now I know strength isn't found in isolation." His voice lowered into a whisper. "Home isn't a place. It's a person." He reached for her hand. "You challenged me. You saved what I couldn't see clearly. You stood beside me during war when leaving would have been easier." His thumb brushed against her fingers. "You are mine not through ownership but through choice." Emotion tightened Olivia's throat. "I choose you too," she whispered. "I choose the empire. I choose the people who became family. I choose us." Applause erupted nearby as Sebastian gently guided her toward the center of the celebration. The king and the woman who transformed his understanding of love stood together before the organization. No formal crown rested upon Olivia's head. It wasn't necessary. Respect had crowned her already. Loyalty had welcomed her. Love had secured her place. She had become the queen beside the king. As music drifted through the gardens and laughter replaced fear, Olivia finally understood that safety wasn't the absence of danger. Safe meant being seen completely and loved anyway. It meant choosing each other every day. But as the evening reached its happiest moment, a member of Sebastian's security team approached carrying an anonymous package delivered moments earlier. The celebration quieted. Inside the package rested old photographs, sealed documents and a handwritten note. Sebastian's expression darkened. Because the evidence pointed toward a hidden enemy connected not to rival syndicates, but to Sebastian's own family. At the bottom of the note, 6 chilling words waited beneath unfamiliar handwriting. The Knight legacy was never finished. And somewhere beyond the celebration, a new chapter had already begun. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who still believes that love and loyalty can survive even the darkest storms. And before you go, tell me this. If you were Olivia, would you choose a man who could make you feel safe, even if loving him meant inheriting his enemies? Or would you walk away to protect your peace? I can't wait to read your answer in the comments. Because sometimes the real ending of a story begins with your choice.